Okay, we've done some live streams. So if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, we started, from the beginning with YouTube here just recently. We're very new to YouTube. We've been doing the podcast for like 5 years now, since mid-January 2020. College football, man, I was kind of chomping at the bit to talk to you guys. Today it's Sunday, November 17th of 2024. Got down to a low temperature in Jacksonville of 50. Up to the north of us, Yulee. Yulee, of all places, the home of Derrick Henry. Played high school ball at Yulee, played high school ball at Bama, played for the dreaded Tennessee Titans, and now he's a Baltimore Raven. Still a good back. And, he started out as kind of a mediocre to average back in the NFL the first couple of years, and he broke 199 yards on a Thursday night against the Jaguars, and that seemed to propel an outstanding NFL career for Derrick Henry. Jaguars fans were not very happy about it, including me. But he's been a good back in the NFL with the Lions now. So Yulee, 48 degrees here in Jacksonville. We got down to 50 this morning on Sunday morning, November the 17th. I gave you my picks on a live stream, so it's important to subscribe to the channel. Then you'll know when we're going live. I'm actually just recording this podcast episode, show number 62, we're going to call it. We're going to salute a guy named Ben Coleman, who was kind of an unheralded offensive lineman back in the heyday, the early days, when the Jacksonville Jaguars actually made it to not one, but two AFC championship games back when Tom Coughlin, the head coach, now in the pride of the Jaguars, was the head coach. And basically, for the most of the time that Tom Coughlin was the head coach, he was the GM. That changed a little bit later, but Ben Coleman, offensive guard number 62 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, played for the Jaguars from 95 to 99. Wore number 62, unheralded, but a very, very good player. And you got to remember the Jaguars had a Hall of Famer on the left side, left tackle Tony Baselli. On the right side, a guy that's not in the Hall of Fame, but was a heck of a right tackle, played with the Steelers, and then he signed as a free agent with the Jaguars a few years later. And, you got Tony Baselli at left tackle, Leon Searcy at right tackle. Got a guy named Ben Coleman playing guard number 62, and he was a bit more unheralded, but most of the time the guards are, unless you're Conrad Dobler or some of the other guards. There are guards in the Hall of Fame, and there were actually some guards that made the Hall of Fame that I think Tony Baselli should have got in before them. But Tony's in. Tony Baselli's been in the Hall of Fame now, for a couple of years. Congratulations to Tony. It was a long wait and ride for left tackle Tony Baselli to make it into he's already in the pride of the Jaguars, obviously, but to make it in the actual Pro Football Hall of Fame. Fred Taylor wants to get in. He should get in. I think Jimmy Smith one day will eventually get in. He put up great numbers and played a lot of games for the Jaguars. And Tom Coughlin's got a chance to get in, not only as the Jaguars head coach and later became vice president of operations, executive vice president, but the Jaguars have made it to 3 AFC championship games in 30 years. Now, 30 years is a long time. All 3 of those AFC championship game appearances is when Tom Coughlin was a part of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and either as a coach GM, or as the executive vice president. Everything went through Tom Coughlin when he was the executive vice president, when Dave Codwell was the GM. So the Jags have had their good players. There's no doubt about that over the years. Brian Thomas Jr. appears to be a guy that potentially can be a number 1 wide receiver. He's kind of heading in that direction for the Jaguars, wouldn't you say? Trevor Lawrence continues to kind of nurse the left shoulder injury. He's not going to play in the game in Detroit this weekend, and that's a little sad, but let's get him better. The Jags are 2-8. I got a feeling that this is just me thinking outside the box that Trevor Lawrence's agent or representative doesn't want him to play. I'm thinking at this point at 2-8, quarterback Trevor Lawrence is not that excited about playing and taking more punishment. Mac Jones is going to go out there. Mac did not have a great game against the Vikings. The Jags defense and defense of them, they gave up 4 field goals, no touchdowns. The Jags lost 12-7. My executive producer told me, but that means Minnesota was moving the ball a lot if they kicked 4 field goals. That is a good point. That is a very good point. The Detroit game, we'll take a look at the fresh line when I did the football pool, and it's interesting how I did the football pool. It is. I did not do well against the colleges, but I did change my pick. I originally was picking LSU, and then on Friday I got some information. All of a sudden, John Gaylor says, DJ Lagway is going to play. And that changed everything. Yeah, and I had a former Florida Gator football player from Jacksonville tell me, yeah, but he's only going to be at probably 70%. Okay, so he plays the game. It was a heck of a game, man. Florida won. We can move into some college football stuff. We are saluting number 62, Ben Coleman, former offensive guard with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm trying to think which side of the ball Ben played on. I think he played everywhere. He might have even played tackle a little bit too, filling in. But he was a good football player. He was very unheralded, but we're going to salute him. Number 62, Ben Coleman. He was part of a great offensive line, and you got to have a great offensive line to win in the NFL. Seems like the Jags have gotten a lot of offensive linemen in and out of the team the last 5 or 6 years, but I can't say they've got a lot of good ones. They've got a lot of players, a lot of linemen. They've had injuries across the offensive line, too. It's been a disaster. I'm not going to say the Jags' offensive line is bad, but I'm going to say they're not good. When I made that comment, I started thinking about Coach, the first coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They went 0-26. That was old John McKay, who was a great college football coach at USC. Man, he had some funny one-liners he used to tell. There's a documentary called 0-26. You should watch it on YouTube. It is phenomenal. And John McKay used to say some funny stuff. He really did. So when we talk about the Jaguars' offensive line, we say, well, we don't think they're bad, but, man, they're not good. So draw your own conclusions. College football on Saturday. We gave you, on our last live stream, we gave you high school football scores. Now, you can go to bigjreport.com. Go to bigjreport.com and scroll the homepage. You'll find high school football playoff scores for North Florida, South Georgia, a little pocket of Southeast Alabama. I got to check with Brother Doug Applin, but I think Eufaula went down to a school called Vigor, 41-0, Vigor. It's either Vigor or Vigor. Maybe there's even another pronunciation that the executive producer will know. But college football was tough. I think I only had 2 winners. I think I'm 2-4. So I kept on the pros. I really do. Now, Thursday night, I did get the win. Philadelphia came from behind. I picked Philly to cover the 3.5 points, and they did. They had a very good fourth quarter and won that game. They certainly did. What was that darn score? And, we put most everything. What's kind of cool about the Twitter account that we have, we've got several hundred followers. We follow a few hundred people too. What's cool about the Twitter account, all that stuff, when you go to our Twitter, Scott Mullis at Big J Report Scott, I'm not a verified account. If I pay the monthly fee, I could be verified. So that's kind of the difference. But we still got some followers. It looks like 331 followers. Now, JC, you remember the old days when I had 150, 160 followers? It's about doubled now. East Coast Hockey League, Jacksonville Icemen with a 4-1 win over the Savannah Ghost Pirates. That's right. Savannah has a hockey team. They've had that team in Savannah. I think this might be like their 3rd year. It's the 8th year for the Jacksonville Icemen. In the East Coast Hockey League, Jacksonville Icemen with a 4-1 win over the Savannah Ghost Pirates on Saturday night, November the 16th of 2024. Go Icemen! Duval, and yes, they are a part of Duval. P.S. Postscript, the Jacksonville Icemen with a couple of wins in a row now and have a 5-3-1 record. The one means an overtime loss, essentially a regulation tie, but an overtime loss. So the Icemen are now 5-3-1 on the 2024-25 season. Yeah, we'll get to college football. 50 degrees was our low in Jacksonville, Florida this morning on Sunday morning, November the 17th. Yulee got down to 48. We'll take a look at college football. Georgia Bulldogs, man, they trailed in this game and came from behind and won, very similar to the Florida game. Georgia 31, Tennessee 17. In my mind, Tennessee, forgive me, but Tennessee to me is not a top 10 team. Their offense has struggled. Their defense has played well at times, but Georgia pulled out the win. Florida almost got them. Florida lost in overtime up in Tennessee. So two of the biggest scores I've got on the ticker, Georgia 31, Tennessee 17. Florida Gators with a huge win over LSU. Florida 27, LSU 16. Tulane, who I did pick in the pool to cover this. I think Tulane was favored by like 7 points over Navy. And let me see, the score was 35-0. Yeah, Tulane was a 7-point favorite playing at Navy. And Tulane got a good football team. They're in the same conference as Army, so they'll probably end up playing Army in the American Conference. I believe it's called the American Conference, and they'll play in the title game. And then Army has to play Navy. Anything can happen in Army and Navy, just like Georgia, Florida, Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Auburn will be coming up. And I don't care how many losses Auburn has, Alabama, beware, because Auburn could play their best game of the year, and they've got a pretty good coach to put a game plan together. And Coach Hugh Freeze now in his second year at Auburn, and they've not had the best year, no doubt. So again, Tennessee loses to Georgia. Georgia 31, Tennessee 17. That's going to get Georgia back up really into the playoff hunt because Georgia's really only lost, 2 games. Georgia also beat Texas. And quietly, Texas A&M is putting a pretty good season together. They beat Florida. Miami beat Florida. Miami's got like 9 wins. Texas A&M's got 8 wins. So Florida early in the year lost to some teams that turned out to be better than a lot of people thought they would, right? To borrow the old phrase by we are what they thought they were. Well, they turned out to be better than we thought they were. Was that Dennis Green, the old Vikings coach, the late Dennis Green? The old Vikings coach got beat by the Bears, and he said, they are what we thought that we are. They are what they thought we were. They are what we thought they were. Something like that. That was years ago. Yulee 48 this morning. Jacksonville got down to 50. A little cooler up toward Atlanta, I'm sure. My pick on the Jaguars and the Lions, I'm going to take the Lions to win the game. I'm going to say 28-21. I think the Jaguars give them a battle up there, maybe get a couple of turnovers. They might make it closer than people expect. I'm going to pick the Jaguars to beat the spread, but not win the game. And when I tell you the point spread, and we'll get an update on the point spread, but when I did the football pool, the Lions are a 13.5-point favorite, and I like that many points for the Jaguars to get and maybe only lose by 7. The Detroit Lions I've done it in a cute but careful way. Detroit Lions are my survivor pick. I'm going for 8 straight survivor victories in a row if Detroit can beat Jacksonville. And that's not what anybody prompts to hear on the Teal Shirt Report podcast, right? We're talking college football. Georgia 31, Tennessee 17, Florida Gators 27, LSU 16. Let me tell you, the Florida Gators, they had that tight end Hansen caught a pass from the quarterback that wasn't 100% DJ Lagway, man, I'll take him at 85% any day. So he's got that snap throw, man, good wrist action. I don't want to say reminds me of his wrist action might remind me of a guy named Hank Aaron a little bit. Man, he throws a quick, short snap pass. He can run the ball. I think DJ Lagway, especially when he's healthy, I think he could be the total package for Florida. He's a true freshman. Coach Billy Napier's been waiting for him to play for like 3 years. I think Napier has recruited DJ Lagway since he was like in the 10th grade or something in high school. He came from out of Texas, and you hit yourself to a good quarterback, and now Coach Billy Napier looks a little better, doesn't he? LSU's got problems. They do. They got blasted by Bama. Now they've gotten beat by Florida. I saw some stuff this morning, actually. Texas A&M beat New Mexico State. Texas A&M 38, New Mexico State 3. And the Aggies, New Mexico State Aggies are not very good. They play in a lower level. They're almost considered they are mid-major at best. Texas A&M got them at home. Texas A&M 38, New Mexico State 3. Texas A&M putting together quietly a really good season, 8-2. You might have to say Texas A&M is probably in the top 4 of the teams in the SEC right now. 8-2 is pretty good. You win out, Texas A&M's got an argument to be in the playoffs. Georgia beating Tennessee is really huge for the Bulldogs. If Georgia can win out, I think they're probably in the playoff. Texas A&M loses another one, then you're probably talking about them being knocked out, kind of. So Texas A&M, Georgia, even Ole Miss. Those we're still putting our list together, but those might be the top 4 teams in the league. Basically, LSU's knocked out of the playoff. They were 6-2. They got blasted by Bama. They got beat by Florida at Florida Field, 27-16. Yes, JC, we love saying that score. What was critical about that game it was a team win. My wife sent me a message. What are you doing now? Oh, I'm going to message her back. I'm doing the podcast. Now, we're not on the live stream, so she can't watch me right now, but we're recording this one. So I'm going to tell her I just mentioned you on the podcast. She'll love that. Maybe not. So my wife and I got a lot of good news this weekend. I can't go into it right here, but so we got some good news. JC, the executive producer, probably know what I'm talking about. It even John Gaylor. We got some good news. Well, we will talk about it here and probably somewhere along the line. But I never want to jinx anything, but we'll probably have that news later for you. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. Please subscribe to the channel. It's great to have you tuned in. We're talking college football. Jacksonville Icemen even won 4-1 over the Savannah Ghost Pirates in the East Coast Hockey League. That game was played on Saturday night, November the 16th of 2024. Icemen now won a couple of games in a row. They're 5 wins, 3 losses, and 1 overtime loss. They're 5-3-1, essentially on the 2024-25 season. Now we spring back into college football. Florida 27, LSU 16. Okay, talking about the Gator win. The reason why Billy Napier kept his job, and Scott Strickland came out when he did, right before the Texas game, and said, Billy Napier, let's go out. He went on the record and said, Billy Napier will be back in 2025 as the head coach of the Florida Gators. The reason why, in my opinion, Billy Napier kept his job, for about 4 straight weeks, he had his team ready to play. And then if you even look back at Miami and the Texas A&M losses, those teams turned out to be much better teams than anybody thought. Texas A&M and Miami, both of them might end up in the 12-team playoff. And then Tennessee, Florida lost in overtime. Florida blew out Kentucky, but the 4 games I'm talking about, really, and I know Florida won it at Mississippi State, but after that, the 4 games I'm talking about are Central Florida, the Kentucky win, the Tennessee loss in overtime, and Florida had Georgia 20-20 late in the third quarter or early in the fourth quarter. In those 4 games, Coach Billy Napier had his team prepared to play. Then the unthinkable happened, and think about this. Florida lost their top 2 quarterbacks, Graham Mertz, like a month ago. In the Florida-Georgia game, late in the second quarter, I believe it was, DJ Lagway went out with the hamstring. He couldn't play in the Texas game, which Florida lost. And I'm sure Scott Strickland said before the Texas game, he's saying, man, I got to come out with something because, man, this could get really ugly for our program and Coach Billy Napier. He came out, went out on a limb for his coach and said, Coach Billy Napier will be back in 2025. I think it was a great timing. It's going to help recruiting. Billy Napier's proven he can string a few games together as far as keeping his team prepared. And that's why he kept his job, because he prepared the Florida Gators team well for about 4 straight games. There was like an open date in there too, or 2 open dates. And so it was about a 5 or 6 week period where he had his team prepared, even though the Florida Gators losses had mounted. They had losses to Miami, Texas A&M. Who was the other loss? Miami, Texas A&M. Florida lost to Tennessee in overtime, and they got beat by Georgia. Georgia came from behind and won that game. And it is not anything at this point in the last, 3, 4, 5 years. Losing to Georgia is nothing to be ashamed of because, Kirby Smart has put a great program together at Georgia. Now, Georgia's got some issues. They got to keep winning or they might miss the playoff. I think the people that run the playoff, the 4-letter network, they're going to want Georgia in there. Another loss for Georgia, and I don't think they get in there. But now with 2 losses, I think if Georgia can run the table, I think they're probably in the playoff because as we put together and I'm still working on it, by the way, the BigJReport.com SEC Power Rankings, you got to put Bama up there. Bama's 7-2. I believe at this point, but we'll take a look at the standings. But Bama comes off a big win over LSU. They blew LSU out. Florida, a nice win over LSU, 27-16. And if you want to talk about, and some other scores, Clemson 24, Pitt Panthers 20. Clemson trying to get in the playoff from the ACC. Texas now, this is a game that Texas did not cover the spread. I was hoping they would because I picked them 13.5 points. They were favored they won by 10. Low scoring game. Arkansas, they're capable of playing tit for tat with anybody on a given day. They beat Tennessee earlier this season, but Texas 20, Arkansas 10, Clemson 24, Pitt Panthers 20. Tulane blasted Navy 35-0. Florida 27, LSU 16. South Carolina did not cover, sadly for me, but South Carolina beat Missouri 34-30. South Carolina is ranked 21st in the nation, at least this week. And winning, that means they shouldn't be going down. So South Carolina, you got to think if they run the table, maybe they're in the hunt, but probably not. Georgia and I need to make a note of this. Georgia, really a good win. I mean, they only gave up 17 points to Tennessee. Tennessee's offense, so, has been relatively anemic at times, particularly in the first half. But Tennessee came out, got a lead in this game. It was very similar to the Florida-Georgia game. Georgia ends up winning at Georgia 31, Tennessee 17, the final. Again, I want to talk more about the Florida game. Tulane 35, Navy nothing. Some of the big scores of the games that were played on Saturday, November the 16th. I want to talk more about the Florida win, though, because there were some things that happened in that game. And I did watch from my monitor. I did watch most of the game. And Florida It was a battle. At one time, the game was 10-10, then it was 13-13. Florida had a very good fourth quarter, and there were several ingredients. It was a team win. The Florida Gator defense is playing more aggressive football. They're more tenacious. They're more aggressive. And the Florida Gator defense got 7 sacks. The LSU offensive line, I think, had only given up 6 sacks prior to this game. But the Florida Gator defensive line, they all of a sudden they're busting loose, playing better, and that's got to make you feel good if you're a Gator fan. This was all going on at Florida Field in front of, I know, the home fans. But the ingredients for this win were big plays, 7 sacks by the defense. The defense playing much better and playing more aggressive and tenacious football, trying to make something happen on that side of the ball. And when it's all said and done, the defense only gives up 16 points to LSU. JC, you remember when LSU was playing, I think it was USC, very early in the season, and we were kind of saying, man, those look like 2 playoff teams. Playoffs. LSU's not going to be in a playoff. Their team is kind of falling apart right now. I saw some stuff reported this morning that Coach Brian Kelly was yelling at some players, and they were yelling back. And there were some expletives. Somebody was reading the lips saying there were some F words thrown around by Kelly, and you know, I guess you have to come out if you're Kelly and say, well, we were in the heat of battle, but he's got problems with his players. NIL, well, sometimes it rears its ugly head. Money, losses, a coach losing games. That's what's happening with LSU and Brian Kelly. Now, if I go back to take a look at what really happened in the Florida LSU game, it was big plays. The defense was playing good and more aggressive football. That's the kind of defense I like. The pass defense was good by the Gators as well. But they got 7 sacks on the LSU quarterback. I thought he got hurt one time. I'm sure he's in pain this morning, is what I'm thinking. But Florida got 7 sacks. Lagway played a good game, but there was a key part of the game. I mean, Florida Field erupted in Gainesville. It was sold out. And there was a key completion by Lagway to the Florida tight end in the fourth quarter. Hansen took that thing 20, 30 yards down the field, and I think it was the very next play, hands it off to Baugh. Baugh goes all the way for the touchdown. Those were the plays that busted the game wide open. Florida had to run the clock, but man, they made the plays to score again because they really needed to score again to basically claim the game, put the game out of reach. That's what they did. The DJ Lagway pass to the tight end Hansen was a huge play for, I know it was at least 20 yards or more. And then Baugh ran a long touchdown run in. The running back, who's a freshman that has a lot of potential. He's been playing really, really well in most of the games over the last, say, 4 or 5 games since he's been playing. Florida's had an injury to their top running back, and Baugh is playing. The other kid, Jackson, is playing good football. So there were big plays in this game. The Florida defense stepped up huge with 7 sacks in the game. DJ Lagway played well, threw the football good when he had to. And Florida did enough to win. And then they closed it out with the big pass play from Lagway to Hansen, and then the long run for a touchdown by the running back Baugh. So those were the critical things that happened in the game. Plus, you got a sold out swamp at Florida Field, and Florida wins the game 27-16. High school football scores, by the way, are up on our website at bigjreport.com. How about my Ed White Commanders? They won. I don't, it's going to be tough for Ed White to win in the second round. The competition is going to get a lot tougher, but they did win their first round game. And you can find all those high school football scores on our website at bigjreport.com. bigjreport.com. We're brought to you by Saucer Realty and Capital for your real estate needs here in North Florida. The MadMaxMix.weebly.com. Mad Max is a great show on internet radio. Great show on internet radio every Wednesday night, 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock Central Time, 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock Eastern Time with Mad Max. So we're not drinking the Kool-Aid, we're drinking the coffee. Thank you, Coffee Boy. Our executive producer, JC, gave me a lot of good information during the week. So did Mr. John Gaylor. And I switched my pick. I switched my pick in the football pool from LSU to Florida. I got the information about Lagway. I made a pick on Wednesday or Thursday. Then I went back to the man. I said, hey, can I change one of my college picks? And this was on Friday. And he said I could. He said, who do you want? I said, I want Florida. I want Florida in the 4 points for the football pool. It's a football pool against the spread, mind you. And it's tough to pick them against the spread. I'll tell you that. Florida Gators 27, LSU 16. Georgia Bulldogs 31, Tennessee 17. A final. This is the Teal Shirt Report podcast. Episode show number 62. Jags playing this weekend on the road against Detroit. By the way, our podcast is sponsored in part by Saucer Realty and Capital, also by the MadMaxMix.weebly.com and Lake Eufaula Hits. JC has a great show on Thursday nights, live with JC in the pub on Thursday nights, beginning at 6 o'clock Central Time, 7 o'clock Eastern Time at LakeEufaulaHits.com. Great internet radio where it's all good, 24/7 internet radio entity, LakeEufaulaHits.com. Absolutely great internet radio. Jaguars, when I did the football pool, Jaguars are actually a big underdog in this game. I picked Detroit. I haven't used Detroit all year, and you can only use one team one time in the Survivor game. Detroit's got a great team. They're at home. They're playing the lowly 2-8 Jaguars. Do I think Detroit covers this 13.5-point spread? No. They could, but do I think so? No. I think the Jaguars put up a fight. I think they get beat. I picked the score. I think the Jags are going to get beat by the Lions, say 28-21. That means no field goals, right? Man, Minnesota kicked 4 field goals against the Jaguars last week. No touchdowns. And I said, well, that's pretty good of the defense of the Jags not to give up a touchdown. But JC, my executive producer, reminded me, well, they kicked 4 field goals. They were moving the ball up and down the field. That's a good point. We're going to be back, probably do a live stream some point in time today during the Jags game. There's some good NFL games today. The Washington Commanders have already played the Thursday night game. Let me give you and that's one reason why I was talking about the X or Twitter a little bit earlier, is we do put scores up there, and I can go back and I can take a look. And again, we've got stuff on Twitter or the X. We've got some of our podcasts actually where you can go up there, click on it, and watch the podcast. And on YouTube, when you see one on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Ed White Commanders in high school football playoffs. Ed White Commanders 26, Pine Forest 13. That game was on Friday night, November the 15th, and that game was played at Commander Stadium. That was a home playoff game for the Ed White Commanders. Ed White Commanders 26, Pine Forest 13, a final. Oakleaf beat Mandarin. Oakleaf 17, Mandarin 14, a final. Again, Ed White 26, Pine Forest 13. Rains Vikings 53, Bay 14, a final on Friday night, November the 15th of 2024. More high school football scores are up on our site at bigjreport.com on the homepage. So those are just a few of the scores. By the way, Eufaula got knocked out of the playoffs in Alabama, in that pocket of southeast Alabama. Vigor, Vigor, Vigor defeated Eufaula. Unless I got the score wrong, and if we do, we'll change it. But we had a wrong score with Eufaula, but Eufaula still lost a couple of weeks back, and that was, I believe, the Charles Henderson game they lost. But this was a playoff game. Vigor 41, and the Eufaula Alabama Tigers nothing. Doug Appling did say they've had a tough year. They did make the playoffs, but they're not as good as they normally are. Doug Appling told us they're just not very good this year. That doesn't mean they're not a decent team because they did make the playoffs. If Bigger 41, Eufaula, Alabama, nothing. So that's some of the high school football scores. The rest of the playoff scores, most of them, are up on the website at bigjreport.com. And let's see. We're going to come back, I think, with a live stream here in a little bit. So if you haven't subscribed to our channel, then you'll know when we're live all the time. Let's see if there's been any movement on the Jags-Lions game as far as, let me take a look here. This game is today. Let's see what's almost a line. Let's see if the line has changed any. Okay, we'll take a look at the latest on the Jaguars and the Lions game. When the football pool came out and we're playing the football pool, the Lions a huge favorite by 13.5 points. So I took the Jaguars, but I'm not saying the Jaguars are winning the game. In fact, I'm saying the Lions are winning the game, but it ends up maybe a 7-point difference. My goodness, that's not what I wanted to see. You pull stuff up on the internet, sometimes it'll pull it up from a couple of years ago. So let's see if we got the updated 2024 game between the Jacksonville. This is the game today, November the 17th, 2024, 1 o'clock p.m. kickoff today at Ford Field. Lions 8-1, Jacksonville Jaguars 2-8. Okay, and our basic source is telling us Detroit will win, Jacksonville will cover, and the total will go over. Total points at 47 in this one. And if you take my final score, Lions 28, Jaguars 21, that's 49, and that does mean the total goes over. So I completely agree with our source. The spread, by the way, the latest spread on the game, the best spread, is still the same as when the football pool was done back on Wednesday or Thursday. Detroit Lions, a 13.5-point favorite. My pick is going to be the Lions 28, the Jacksonville Jaguars 21. Believe you me, I've been a fan of this team, and I've covered this team in the media since even before they started playing. Way back. I'm talking about way back. Push them back, way back. You remember that old? I don't think they do that cheer anymore in college football. But, we've not done good in the colleges this week. I did get Tulane winning right. Tulane blew out Navy. Tulane covered. Florida Gators not only beat the spread, but won the game. And we got a couple of scores on the ticker. Florida 27, LSU 16, Georgia 31, Tennessee 17. There's other games too. Texas A&M quietly is 8-2. Texas A&M 38. The New Mexico State Aggies 3. Alabama beat LSU last week. LSU, they've got problems. They're 6-4 now, I think. And apparently Brian Kelly's yelling at players. The players shouldn't yell back, but they did. So that may go back. Everybody's on an NIL deal now. They do what they want to do. This is minor league football, college football. I'm not a big fan of the NIL. I'm not a big fan of the immediate transfer portal. I've never been a big fan of major. Conference realignment is okay to me sometimes, but major conference realignment is kind of crazy. The Board Letter Network runs it. They have a lot more power, in my opinion. The TV networks have a lot more power, in my opinion, than the college presidents do when it comes to college football. We've been brought to you by Saucer Relating Capital, the Mad Max Mix, Weebly.com, Lake Eufaula Hits. Special thanks to our executive producer, JC. We'll be back in a little bit. We're going to do a live stream here in a little bit as well. But we wanted to get one in the can. We're saluting number 62 on episode show number 62. Ben Coleman, former offensive guard that played in the late 1990s for some very good Jacksonville Jaguars football teams back in the day, in the early days. Ben Coleman, we salute you. Former offensive guard, he wore number 62, and this is episode show number 62. of the Teal Shirt Report podcast. We appreciate you guys listening. We got a nice episode, about 40 minutes right now. We've been talking to you. We're going to come back with a live stream as well. Hey, the coffee is brewing now at World Headquarters. I'm Scott with BigJReport.com. Special thanks to our sponsors again, Social Realty and Capital, the Mad Max Mix. We never miss Mad Max's show on Wednesday night, and we don't miss JC's show on Thursday night. Thursday night live from the pub with JC at Lake Uvalde Hits. LakeUvaldeHits.com. Great internet radio where it's all good. JC, keep those cards and letters coming. We appreciate you. He's our executive producer and does a great job. We've been eloquently produced by our executive producer, JC. Also by Alex Nunnery. Special thanks to our contributor and correspondent, Mr. John Gaylor. We'll be back in a little bit with a live stream. We're going to put this one in the can. This is the Teal Shirt Report podcast. Episode show number 62. If you want the high school football scores, go to our website at bigjreport.com for the high school football playoff scores. We've got playoff scores from the past weeks, too, toward the end of the regular season. And what else? We'll have more college football scores up on the website later today as well. So thank you guys for tuning in. This has been the Teal Shirt Report podcast. I'm your host, Scott. And man, you guys have a great day, okay?